Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. My name is Rowan, and if you had met me 2 years ago, you'd have met a man who believed stability was the highest form of love. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, and I wasn't the type to turn heads in a crowded room. But I was steady, and for most of my marriage, I thought that was enough. My wife, Lila, used to say she fell in love with me because I made her feel calm. Back then, we were the kind of couple people said would last forever. We didn't fight often, but when we did, it always ended with her head on my shoulder and her whispering, "You're my safe place, Rowan." I held on to that for years, even as the tone of her voice slowly changed, even as the warmth in her eyes cooled into something distant. It started subtle, a comment here, a sigh there. She'd scroll through her phone at dinner, give half-hearted answers, and complain that life felt boring. I'd ask what she meant, and she'd wave it off with a laugh, saying I was overthinking. But I could feel something slipping, like trying to grip water in my hands. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in early fall. The sun was setting, casting that orange glow across the living room, the kind that usually makes everything feel softer. But that day, the air felt sharp. Lila stood in front of me, arms crossed, chin lifted in a way I'd never seen before. There was a finality to her posture, a script rehearsed in the mirror. "I'm leaving you, Rowan," she said. "I'm leaving you for a real man." At first, I genuinely thought she was joking. Lila liked teasing, and she had a dramatic streak when she wanted attention. But there was no playfulness now, just cold certainty. "A real man," I repeated, the words thick on my tongue. "Yes," she said, not flinching. "Someone who makes me feel alive. Someone ambitious. Someone who isn't safe. I'm tired of safe." It landed like a punch I never saw coming. Not because she was leaving, but because she said it with a straight face, as if the years we spent building a life together were some quiet embarrassment she needed to outgrow. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just nodded once, because something inside me understood that if she could say that, then she had already left long before the conversation. She packed her things the next morning, humming to herself like she was getting ready for a weekend getaway. Her sister, Mara, helped her load boxes into the car. Mara had always liked me. She was bright, sarcastic, and sharper than she let on. That day, she kept looking at Lila like she didn't recognize her. When they drove off, I stood at the door with my hands in my pockets, not waving, not crying, just existing. It felt like someone had turned down the volume on the world. The months that followed were quieter than I expected. I thought heartbreak would roar, but mine whispered. I went to work, paid bills, fixed the leaking sink she'd always nagged about. I even started jogging again. People say loneliness is loud, but for me it was oddly peaceful. Meanwhile, I heard things, small things, from mutual friends. Apparently the real man she left me for wasn't real at all. A wandering ego in nice shoes. He flattered her, dazzled her, and then burned out like a cheap candle. The relationship crashed fast. Some said he cheated. Some said he ghosted her. Some said he used her for a place to stay. I didn't ask. I didn't want details. 6 months after she left, on a rainy Sunday afternoon, Lila showed up at my door. No warning, no text, just her standing there in an oversized hoodie, mascara smudged, hair damp from the drizzle. "Rowan," she whispered, voice trembling. "I made a mistake." I didn't reply. I simply stepped aside so she wouldn't get wet. She walked in like a stranger in her own home, eyes scanning the walls, the familiar furniture, the quiet space she abandoned. That's when the front door opened again, and her sister, Mara, stepped in behind her, holding something small between her fingers. It was my wedding ring, not in a box, not wrapped carefully, just dangling lightly from her index finger, catching the light as she twirled it with a knowing smirk. "Well, sis," Mara said, lifting her hand, "your wedding ring suits me, huh?" Lila's face flushed a deep red. Anger, embarrassment, jealousy. I couldn't tell. But whatever she expected to happen today, this wasn't it. And the worst part? I didn't know if Mara was joking, or if she wasn't. Lila froze in the middle of the living room, her eyes flicking between the ring on Mara's finger and my expression, which, to her surprise, didn't change. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't amused. I wasn't hurt. I was simply still, and that, more than anything, seemed to rattle her. "Mara, what are you doing?" Lila hissed, her voice rising with that familiar mix of insecurity and entitlement she never admitted to. "What?" Mara shrugged, still inspecting the ring like it was a piece of jewelry she found at a boutique. "It fits, and Rowan clearly wasn't using it." Lila whipped around to me, as if waiting for me to jump in and defend her pride. But I didn't. Not because I suddenly wanted Mara, not because I was trying to make a point, but because I didn't know an emotional reaction to someone who threw my heart into a moving box and drove away. "You're being childish," Lila snapped at her sister. Mara smiled. A small, sly smile that hid more understanding than mischief. "Childish? Maybe. But if you wanted to keep the ring, maybe you should have kept the husband." I watched as Lila's breath hitched. She looked at the couch, at the framed photo on the shelf, at the rug she picked out, and the lamp she always said was too dim. Everything hit her at once. The home she left, the life she abandoned, and the stability she thought she was too good for. She sank onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. "I messed up," she whispered through her fingers. "I let myself be stupid. I thought I needed excitement. I thought I deserved more. But I ended up with someone who didn't even care if I ate dinner." Mara leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "He treated you exactly the way you used to treat Rowan." Lila's hands fell from her face, and she glared at her sister. "That's not fair." "It's accurate," Mara replied calmly. The silence that followed was heavy enough to fill the room. I sat on the opposite chair, giving them space, but internally I felt an odd mixture of empathy and detachment. I wasn't cruel enough to rejoice in her pain, nor naive enough to forget that she chose it. Finally, Lila looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. Her eyes were brimming with something that looked like fear. "Rowan, can we talk? Just you and me?" I shook my head gently. "No. Anything you want to say, you can say right here." She swallowed hard, her voice cracking. "I want to come home. I want us back. I know I don't deserve it, but Her voice faded as tears spilled over. "I miss you, and I miss who I was with you." Mara's face softened, but she didn't remove the ring. Lila reached for my hand, but I didn't move. Not out of cruelty, just clarity. If I let her grasp me now, I knew it would pull me backward into something I'd painfully outgrown. "Lila," I said quietly, "you didn't leave because you found someone better. You left because you thought you were better than what we had. And now you're here because life humbled you, not because you rediscovered love." She shook her head vigorously. "No, that's not it." "It is." I cut in gently. "You chose excitement over loyalty, impulse over foundation, ego over partnership." I exhaled slowly. "And I don't judge you for that. But I can't re-enter a story that already ended." Her eyes widened, panic surfacing. "So that's it? After everything? You won't even try?" I met her gaze steadily. "You didn't leave me for a real man. You left because you didn't know what real meant." The words hit her harder than I expected. She sat back, shoulders shaking as she tried to hold herself together. Mara stepped forward then, placing the ring gently on the coffee table. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "losing you was the stupidest thing she's ever done." Lila glared weakly at her sister. "You're not helping." "I'm not trying to help," Mara replied. "I'm just telling the truth." Lila grabbed a tissue from her bag, wiping her cheeks. "So, where do we go from here?" I stood up, not unkindly, but firmly. "You go home, Lila. You rebuild. You learn yourself again. And someday, when the hurt fades, you'll understand why I couldn't wait at the door for you to come back." "And you?" she whispered, eyes searching me for any piece of hope. "I'm already where I need to be." She stared at me for a long, trembling moment before nodding faintly. Mara placed a hand on her shoulder, guiding her toward the door. Lila paused there, looking back at me like she was memorizing a version of me she never bothered to appreciate. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for everything. I hope you find peace," I replied. They left. The house fell silent again. The same silence she once hated. The same silence I learned to make a home in. When I picked up the ring from the table later, I didn't feel sadness or anger or triumph. I felt freedom, calm, steady freedom. The kind that isn't loud, doesn't demand attention, and doesn't need to prove anything. The kind I once thought wasn't enough. Turns out it was everything.